Back in the meat grinder. I'm pretty much going to cry. Where your warm-up would have been yesterday, write the words field trip. 1013 warm-up is field trip. And make sure it's dated so that the TAs know that you were still at school the right number of days. Man, that was such a glorious day yesterday. Who stayed behind?
I
Nope.
was sick.
Oh, wow. You lost. Sam, you were here solo yesterday with my substitute?
There was a student here too.
Really?
Yeah.
Who else? Who stayed yesterday? Who? You were sick? There was a student here?
Yeah.
So they're not raising their hand right now?
Maybe they're not. Maybe it was Maria or
Yeah.
Noah.
Maybe Noah?
No one.
No,
Oh,
the girl. Okay.
It was
Maria.
Maria probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she missed a bunch of school at the beginning of the year, so I don't think she can go. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, first of all, I really, really appreciate some feedback. Whatever you can tell me, like, how much is it worth to you? Like, I got to spend about 2 weeks, like, wasting my lunch time and my afternoon time. Like, that's about 2 weeks of, like, stupid paperwork and phone calls and paperwork and phone calls and paperwork and phone calls. So I really got to know that you like it. Like, you got to tell me that you like it if you want me to keep doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. I have like a little suggestion for
Great.
Raising the money for it.
Okay.
I think we should just have the students like bring $5 and give you the $5 for whatever it costs for each student, at least for like this trip that each student could afford. Because $5 wouldn't be much to each person, but
You're right.
a lot.
And we used to do that a few years ago. But as a school, we don't do that anymore. And I don't mean this in it. There's no way to say this nicely. That suggestion betrays the fact that for you, you can afford it.
$5?
There are people that could make a $5,000 donation more easily than some people could make a $5 expense. And it's easy to forget just how hard it is to come up with $5. A lot of kids would give away their lunch money rather than show that their family's the one that can't spare the $5. And that's not fair, and that's not equitable, and that doesn't make people want to come to school. Like right now, like seriously, dude, like I can just sponsor all you. Like it's cool, you know, like $700, whatever. Like I can afford it. Personally, just Jose, even Jose. Like I value it. But when I first came to the US, dude, when like that first month that we were all here, my dad came a few months earlier, and then that first month that we were all together, I don't think we would have had $5. I'm sure we wouldn't. We were living like $300 a month as like a family. Like I don't even know how my dad made that happen. And like the bottom line is every single person in this school should know that this education comes free. It's like one of the few like truly successful methods of offering equal opportunity in this country. Like the promise of equal opportunity that we're all so patriotically in love with, like that's something I'll stand up and put my hand over my heart for. It starts to fall apart when some kids are like, oh, I don't really have access to this. This isn't for me. And so seriously, the asking money in the classroom thing and like students walking up and passing up their $5 or whatever, like I just can't do that. I do still need the money, and yeah, you're right, a lot of kids can, so probably I should say something beforehand. And I'll just say it right now, if anybody ever wants to, you can make a donation. It won't be in class, you won't be bringing it up to me. After class, between periods, at lunch, or directly at the business office, it's called the Green Academy Trust. You can go to the business office and say, I just want to donate this to the Green Academy Trust. You can just give them money and it gets straight to me and there's no funny business. You can give it to the lady at the business office. You can bring it to me some other time. Somebody gave me $50 this morning. Covered 10 of you, or 9 of you. And you're right about the money, man. It would be cool if it wasn't such an obvious way to make some people feel bad. But it really, like, I've been the really poor guy in the class before, and it does make people feel bad, like really feel bad. Yeah.
Can you send out an email to parents and telling them about our day and like what we did? Because like my dad said, he's like most parents like don't know like that you need the money and everything.
Yeah, my parents didn't know. After you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll mail it, sure, but that was already in the contract that they signed that they read.
Yeah, but they have like a lot of men writing.
I know, that's what I'm saying. And so the email usually takes me more time than it gets outcome. Like in the time it takes to write that email and make sure that I have all the addresses right and send it out, like it's almost easier at that point to just like use that time to work more and get that money and pay for it myself. But yeah, you're right. I will probably be sending out an email. What else? Anything that's not about the money, I appreciate your input on this. It's not, those aren't bad ideas. But what else?
I was just wondering why it was so expensive. I didn't go.
Well, each bus costs like a base rate, plus we pay extra because they got to stay out long enough for us to get off the bus, do an hour, and then get back on the bus. So busing alone cost, I think, $570 for yesterday.
School pay for that though?
And then the sub, what?
Didn't the school pay for that?
No, I pay for it. I mean, like my school account, my ASB account pays for it. So the school writes the check, but I got to give them the money to write the check. And then the sub costs about $100. It cost me about $160, I think, or $180. That's not exactly what she gets paid, but we got to pay the district, and they keep some money for it.
Do you get paid for everything when you're sick and everything like that?
No, the sick days are covered in my contract. Yeah.
I have like a suggestion about like, I don't know, maybe just somehow splitting it up into like two groups maybe instead of like a one big one, so it's like kind of more like a concentration of like the information stuff. Like maybe have one group start where that where that lady was like telling us like
Yeah.
like a parent like a couple TAs have them there, and then you like at Manzanita Village and like the beach and stuff, and then kind of do like a rotation thing, And I mean.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion too, and I've talked about that. I've never figured out a way to keep control over what the other person does. I feel often like if I'm not there, like the 10% of kids that are more easily distracted and more prone to conversation will sort of sink the battleship for the other instructor. Like if I had a way to run that well, like I could hand it over to another person that I really thought would get the same instructional outcomes, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I agree with you. What else? Yeah.
Maybe make it a little longer.
That's not a bad suggestion, and I've always thought that period 6 was like, must be back for period 6 because of athletes, but if it's only like 5 kids, I don't really care.
Because I feel like most of my friends didn't really. Their 6th period was filled with maybe like 2 kids,
Right.
and they didn't really do anything.
Right.
So.
The schedule's changed a little bit. I think that in the years that I've been teaching, the master schedule started to look a little different. So the average student might have more availability than they did when I started thinking about this, and I think that's a great suggestion. I'll probably do that on the next one. How many of you play a spring sport? So how many of you would not be able to go on a field trip if I was gone until 3 p.m. on like the second week of February?
I don't think it really matters on this day.
Depends on the day. Like, if it's a
Yeah, like if it's a meet, then if it's just a practice, then
Practice
maybe
is like the least important class.
But if it's game day, you're not allowed to miss school.
Well, if it's a game day, that's
Game day,
different,
it's
right?
like, yeah, just on practice.
But it's like that could be easily by like doing it on like a Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, that's what I needed to hear. Okay, so
Like the chances of you doing like
are there less games on Mondays?
I mean, yeah.
You've educated me a great deal. This suggestion, I will take this advice for sure. What else? Nothing else? No overall, no details, nothing? Quit looking at my burrito, girls. Makes me feel uncomfortable.
My eyes are up here.
Yeah, exactly. My eyes are up here. I am more than a food item. Okay. So, some vocab. For those of you that didn't get to take notes, just so you know, I consider it fair game for the exam. And I do this so that the kids who weren't there would still get the same notes. Luckily, a lot of you saw these things already in your homework, and so the field trip just sort of helped. But just so you know, this is all fair game. First of all, we do habitat restoration because of a concept called habitat value. The first thing everybody needs to know is this thing called habitat value, which means that parking lot has very little value as a habitat. Almost no living things can use it. Concrete and asphalt, practically zero value as habitat. Maybe some sort of ants can find a crack and build a nest underneath that stays warm. So as far as I know, ants sort of don't mind asphalt. It's a good place to hide their colony. Anybody ever seen like ant colonies coming out of concrete or asphalt? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Now, a golf course, we would think, yeah, you know, it's all green, productivity, plants, you know, you irrigate and like soil and stuff. That's got to have some habitat value. But just so you know, golf course is very low habitat value. Because most of those grasses are not native grasses, so most insects don't know what to do with that grass. They don't eat it, they don't live there. So golf course, better than concrete. But habitat restoration is to increase habitat value. Provide what other native ingredients need. Because remember, we've been talking about this for a while without actually saying it. Diversity is magic. Diverse ecosystems produce more, function more, and last longer. We have less environmental problems when our ecosystems have diversity. So we got to give them what they need for diversity. We have to give ecosystems a variety of habitats. High habitat value. Not just grass and the golf course, but like muddy spots and sunny spots and shady spots. And places with flowers and places with seeds and places with wood decomposing in the ground. All those little things, they're all separate little habitats to some little ingredient of the food web. You understand what I'm saying here? So, key term from yesterday, microhabitats and habitat diversity.
Can you please recycle those cardboard boxes that are clogging the... Thank you. If you want to be a nice guy, you might want to stomp those down. If you don't feel like being a nice guy, I won't snitch.
Here's a key concept for you. Microhabitats and habitat diversity. What looks to you and me, you know, a wetland. I mean, look, we divided the entire planet into, what was that, like 11 different biomes the other day? That's not a lot. We're like, desert is desert. And that's because biomes are characteristic at the global level, sure. But when you get right down to it and you're there looking at it, you can be in the desert and realize, wow, the north side has more shade, so there's more vegetation, and the south side has more sunlight, so it's more dried out. And that's a difference in microhabitats. Or in an estuary, where the salt water reaches every day, that tends to be fully saturated with salt and lower temperature, where the salt water just gets up every once a month or every storm surge every once a year. You tend to have a different set of plants, and there's a different set of insects, and there's a different set of birds. When we were at the lagoon, you were looking at like 6 or 7 different microhabitats. Let me remind you, the bluffs on top, those can have vernal pools and coastal sagebrush and oakland. That's 3 separate microhabitats. Then the slopes, if they're sunny, have coastal sagebrush. If they're shady, they tend to have oak-dominated woodland. Then, down near the water, there are mud flats where water goes up and down every day, so they're usually muddy or barely underwater. That's where all the little tiny birds, remember those little birds that kept flying away as we walked past? Anybody see those? They had a wingspan like this, little triangular pointy wings that flit really fast. Those guys like the mud flats. We had the stuff that had like shallow water where the wading birds were like walking around and pecking and stuff. Did anybody see the great blue heron that was behind me when we first showed up at the lagoon? Then out in the lagoon, there's some deeper water where you have like some swimming birds that were diving. Did anybody see the diving birds, the cormorants, the red-cheeked cormorants? They dive down to get fish. All of these are separate little micro-habitats. When you offer, please look up, habitat diversity, you increase habitat value by providing many microhabitats. Okay? Lisa gave you a word that I wasn't planning to give you, but it was a really good moment. I got to use it. This one. Oligotrophic. As opposed to eutrophic. Oligotrophic means low in nutrients, like a puddle that fills up with rainwater. That's not going to have a lot of nutrients, it's just rain. As opposed to a place that accepts runoff and fills up with nutrients. Like, the lagoon. Please look up. Lagoon, vernal pool. Like rain puddle, no nutrients. Runoff, full of college kid vomit and urine and food scraps. And by the way, isn't it interesting that my college education was like one of the greatest things I've ever done and was the most exciting 4 years of my life, and I've never been happier than when I was in college. And all my memories are about judging people for vomiting or pissing in public.
You never vomited
Yeah, I
in
was
public?
gonna say, you never been there before?
I want to try really hard to remember one, but
That probably means you shit.
not like I was too faded to remember, but I honestly, like, I have only drank enough to throw up like a couple of times in my life, and I doubt either one was in public. I'm not sure I can rule it out entirely, but I am pretty darn certain. I have barfed in like totally public places from stomach flu. I barfed during class one day. I had to be like, oh, everybody, and I ran out and like barfed in my greenhouse. Back when I was teaching down there, but that wasn't because I was drunk. Seriously, like, here's the thing I think about college. It's like going to a feast and saying, no, I'm on a diet. Like seriously, like all over the world, everybody realizes that's one of the most precious opportunities that any human can ever have. Like people would probably kill to go to university. In the United States, you know? To go to like a top-notch university like UCSB, which coincidentally is like one of the best universities in America, and everybody's like, oh, whatever, party school. Like it's one of the greatest universities in America. And people actually end up there, and then like, yeah, I'm just gonna spend these years like sex crimes and like soiling myself and like holding my girlfriend's hair while she throws up on my nice shoes. Sounds like a good plan. I'm gonna crash my car too. I'll try to get mugged, and I'll try to waste a lot of money. And maybe I'll perpetrate some crimes. And I'll make sure that people take photos of me in embarrassing situations. That's what I'm going to do while I'm here.
Try to get tear gas too.
Yeah, try to get tear gas. Yeah.
Maybe you go
Start a
farm
couple
like
riots.
like a
Yep.
sofa out in the middle of the street.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll light a sofa on fire. Why not? Like, seriously? Like, you're at university, and that's what you're going to do? Like, just so you know, if you want to have, like, some time to get debaucherous and, like, show your mom that you hate her, you can do that right now. You can do that during summer. You got the whole rest of your life to waste yourself away. Like, no hurry. You can be a sloppy drunk forever. But just saying, like, if you're going to go to college, that's, like, one of the most valuable opportunities that our species can ever be offered. That's like showing up at, like, the most amazing feast and being like, no, I don't eat. When I was at college, I was totally straight edge. Like, I did drink a little bit toward the end of my senior year, but not, like, getting drunk drinking. Maybe I did. But, maybe once, like, not... Seriously, I wasn't, like, partying at all. For sure, the first 3 years of college, the first 3, and then most of my senior year, like, not a touch. I walked into, like, 2 parties to be nice, and I bailed really quick. And I think that was a smart choice. I recommend that strategy. You got your whole life to be a stupid drunk. What's stopping me now, right? 38. All right. Enough about barfing in the lagoon as opposed to raining in a puddle. Okay? We talked about mitigation and mitigation ratios. Mitigation, as in when you trade something good for something harmful. And I wanted to remind you that there's like a lot of back and forth and negotiation and lawyers and lawsuits and legal issues and fancy details and data analysis to figure out what the right mitigation plan will be, what the right ratio will be. Lisa was telling us about restoration planning. Which is the process of figuring out what you're going to do, what you're going to build. How do we increase the habitat value of a golf course? You don't plant a bunch of Christmas trees from Canada. A, they don't belong, B, they're not going to do well. And everybody just thinks, you know, you plant the stuff that's supposed to be there, obviously. But how is that obvious? How do you know? You need, obviously, historical information. You need information about what's happening with water in the soil, what is happening with the soil itself. And the key issue that Lisa just totally threw out there for me that really helps is this one. Genetic locality. You got to know that the plants you're growing when you do a habitat restoration, that they're genetically local. Because there's a lot of what we call micro-adaptation. A species that lives in San Diego and Santa Barbara is genetically different in San Diego from Santa Barbara. As a matter of fact, there's evidence, like I was telling you yesterday, that sticky monkey flower growing in San Ysidro Creek is genetically distinct from sticky monkey flower that grows in San Jose Creek 2 miles up the coast. Yeah?
Wait, so you define local as in cities or like as in like?
So it just depends on how much you make it as local as you can afford to. So ideally, you get your seeds from the site itself. If not, you go as close as you can get, and at some point, most ecologists would say it's not even worth it if it's from more than 100 miles away. At that area where Lisa was walking us around, every single plant that they grew for that project was from seeds in less than a 2-mile radius from that site.
So they had to go like physically collect seeds from wild plants.
They do it every Friday. And by the way, I need volunteers to do that, and that's going to be a Green Club project. We will go help them collect seed and label them and put them in jars and save them for later, yeah.
Is that actually
Yeah, I mean, if it racks up to the right number of hours, yeah. So if we can schedule one on a Friday where the students can go, or we can get one of their biologists and do it on Saturday, yeah.
Okay, you know about the seed bank, right?
I know about seed banks. I don't know the one you're referring to.
Oh, well, there's one in Santa Barbara that my dad goes to a lot, and he just brings seeds from his garden, and you can trade them with other seeds, and maybe, like, that would be helpful with the people.
I don't know which one you mean. Give me more info.
Okay.
I know there's a seed trade at the Santa Barbara Library, Faulkner Gallery once a year.
Oh, yeah, that'd be it.
Maybe that's it?
Maybe, yeah.
We talked about estuaries as an ecotone. When we were down at the beach after our lunch break, we saw the lagoon, and it had water going in and water coming out through that little concrete box that looks totally random. Remember, that's a pipe that goes under the ground and connects with the lagoon. So when water is high on one side and low on the other, it flushes both directions. Salt water in, salt water out, to return the natural estuarine flow. Yeah?
Is all the water in the lagoon just from like natural stuff, or is any other?
I don't think that they add water intentionally. It mostly captures runoff from like the dorms, lagoon neighborhood. And that has like a gradual slop and flow depending on the extremity of the tidal shift. Yeah? We saw unbelievable bird diversity in that lagoon. Since a lot of you don't know your birds and it's not a bird class, it seemed like a waste of time, but I counted 17 species yesterday. We saw runoff control. That was that grassy funnel in front of Manzanita Village that absorbs water, so you limit how much water is flowing across the surface, carrying away people's garbage. And we saw bioswales, which are vegetated canals, so that runoff can be slowed down, absorbed, and bioremediated.
Yeah.
Bioswales will slow runoff, bioswales absorb runoff. They bioremedy the water, so biological activity will break down pollution in the water. And they limit, like, the flood of pollution at the other end. Everybody look at this. When water pours off my roof, it splashes onto this sidewalk, takes all the gum and spit and garbage, just goes into these concrete gutters, and that just flows out to the ocean. If we could soak up that water, there'd be less movement of this pollution. And whatever little bit was still running into that canal, if that canal was a bunch of plants, it would absorb more of the water instead of dumping it. It would filter that water because those plants are soaking up the nitrogen and phosphorus. And it would prevent this huge toilet flush of garbage to the ocean because there'd be less water showing up at the ocean cleaner over a slower amount of time, over a longer amount of time. A planted canal. Bioswales are, look, there's two ways, like, you have to realize we're solving the same problem differently. Sometimes it rains, and sometimes there's crap on the floor. Those are facts that we can't solve either of those. So now what are we going to do with all that? We can, from like the 1700s until like the 1960s, just put that into plumbing and get the water away from you. Flush the toilet down at the beach. Okay? The alternative is, since the 1970s or so, we've started to not do concrete ditches. We make natural streams, you know, like rocks and gravel and plants. Because that slows the water, absorbs more of it into the ground, and instead of flushing all that trash, it'll help break down that trash. Any chemicals in there that are organic, like poo and rotting leaves and dead lizards, instead of flushing out into the ocean where they decompose there, they'll be decomposed and absorbed by plants. They'll be recycled into biomass along the way. Yes?
So were those plants in front of the lagoon, were those not bioswales, or are they bigger?
You saw like two bioswales. One, when we were walking, the first place that we saw Lisa, we walked over a little bridge. Some of you may have noticed. The other place where I'm sure you saw one is we sat down on the grass, walked around the lagoon on like a decomposed granite pathway, and at one point, the trail made a switch back and started going uphill with like a metal railing on the right and on the left. To the left, as you were going uphill, there was like, it looked like a dry creek. That's a bioswale.
There's like a little sign.
There was two little signs, blue signs that said bioswale. Yeah, that's the creek that has vegetation in it. No, because it hasn't rained in a long time right now. But when it rains, the water will flow down that. Okay? It's like that concrete gutter doesn't have water in it either. Right now. Bioswales and runoff control. Finally, we talked about vernal pools. Which are like collections of rain on clay-rich soil. Very unique biome because they'll have surface water into summertime. That's pretty rare. And we talked about solarization, where we use sunlight to cook plants under sheets of black plastic. Last chance to discuss the field trip. By the way, that was the most people I've ever seen in the ocean on one of my field trips. That was so glorious. I literally had like a 2-3 foot airdrop body surfing. I've never experienced, that like defies the laws of physics as far as I know. That was kind of like, those little moments of like, honest to goodness shacking out there. All right. Now 3.4. Haha. Haha. I don't think so.
Yeah, well, I had some weird.
Huge sum, yeah.
We got to like the
at 25.
Perfect.
Oh no, we got to 27.
That's what I thought. So, when I woke up today, let's imagine the energy stored in my beautiful body was like 1 million calories. For the sake of conversation, this sexy lump of Argentinian steak is worth 1 million calories to the first wolf or tiger or shark that eats me, right? Now today, because it's an average day, I'll probably eat about 3,500 calories, which coincidentally is about double what most of you eat. You eat a lot because you're growing and you're active, and I eat much more than you, and I'm not growing much, and I'm not active much, and I don't know why, but I have a super high metabolism, and I always have. And nobody can explain it to me, but I'm pretty sure that means I'm going to die young. But anyway, let's round out these numbers. Look up. If I eat 3,000 calories of food today, will I go to sleep as a 1,003,000 calorie meal? Has my body gained 3 calories when I go to bed tonight? 3,000 calories?
You use some of it up for like bodily processes during the day and stuff.
Yeah. I use it up being sexy Argentinian steak. Takes energy to be this good looking. No, really, it does. I don't see what's so fun. And where does that energy go?
Heat.
What?
Heat.
Heat. He just bought it, so old. Yeah, it goes off as heat. Like when I'm yelling, like my cells are breaking up bonds and they're doing work, and that energy is being used to do stuff and move my muscles and move my diaphragm and make my mouth make these noises, and the tongue is doing all like gross stuff. Anybody ever see what happens when you focus on somebody's tongue? So gross. And in the course of being Jose, I'll probably spend all those calories, and they'll do stuff, and as a byproduct, you can measure those 3,000 calories. If I was in a glass bubble with a thermometer in it, you would find all those calories coming off my body as heat. So look at this. There's this concept called trophic inefficiency. This is number 27. There's technically a lot of details to how much energy goes into something and how much energy is left in it. So let's talk about raising meat, okay? First of all, let's talk about Jose. I've been eating for 37 years. Everybody agree with 37 years? I had this exact body weight about 8 years ago. So for the last 8 years, all the calories that went into me have not changed my caloric content of storage. Does that make sense to everybody? Do we agree with this concept? That as long as my body weight doesn't change, you can feed me until the day I die, and that food is just metabolic waste. Agreed? Not storage, right? So when we raise meat for slaughter, like cows and pigs and chickens, we gotta kill them when they're still growing fast, not keep feeding them forever when there's nothing more to be gained by feeding them. Does that make sense to everybody? You understand this concept? That usually most of the steak you eat was like a teenage cow, the equivalent of a teenage cow. And most of the chicken you eat was the equivalent of a teenage chicken, and most of the pigs you eat are the equivalent of a teenage pig. Are you aware of that?
Why is this like bigger married people aren't just saying that like teenagers like learn more for like growing and everything, and so wouldn't it be better to like do it when they're adults or they like don't have?
The sweet spot to kill you is when you're done growing.
But that's not the same for animals.
That is the same for animals, and as a matter of fact, you're mostly done growing. I mean, some of you probably haven't put on any inches in the last couple of years. Did any of you reach your current height 2 years ago? Okay, so you're probably topped out already. You've already gone past the curve. Look, if you measure the efficiency of an organism, it goes roughly like this. You want to kill stuff? Right there. Because after that it plateaus. Everybody understand what I'm saying? Now, you get to a point where no matter how much I feed you, you're not really, as long as you're active, you're not going to be gaining much weight anymore. So there's a waste. So we say that for chickens, the amount of energy you put in compared to the amount of energy you get out of it is about 17 to 19% if you kill them when they're like 3 or 4 months old. And for pigs, you get about 12 to 14% if you kill them when they're, I think, under a year, 9 months old, 10 months old. And for cows, I think you get somewhere between 6 and 8% of the energy you put into them as edible cow. If you eat them when they're... Anybody know when you slaughter cows? 14 months? 2 years? Anybody know? Who cares? I just eat that stuff. By the way, how many of you don't eat any meat? Okay, we'll come back to that. Now, chickens are like 19%, then they're done. Pigs are like 12 to 14%, cows like 6 to 8%. Watch this fun fact. The global average, please look up, when you jump from producers to primary to secondary to tertiary consumers, the global average, as a rule of thumb, for you to remember, is 10% efficiency. 10% of the energy that goes into each organism is kept as the caloric value of that organism. In other words, the net energy content of an organism is roughly 10% of what went into that organism. They use about 90%. Watch. Trophic inefficiency is roughly 90% of the energy transfer as you move up the food web. This is number 27, which coincidentally has 2 stars. That explains why it's shaped like a pyramid, because at each step, about 90% is metabolized. So here's why that's important. And just so you know, this is like a key issue for like feeding the world. How many of you know the trophic efficiency argument for being a vegetarian? What is it?
It's like if you eat the stuff that produces energy, you don't have to, but you get more energy than you put in.
Sort of. You get more energy than what?
It's saying like,
Yeah. Like if you put energy into it, it produces most of its own food and things like that. So you get more energy than you put into it by making it and like consuming it yourself. And if you fed it to a cow after you grow it,
Yeah. Compared to the cow food has more energy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like if you were losing 90% on each transaction, you're going to lose 90% feeding it to the cow and then 90% to you instead of just 90% straight to you.
Right. If you look at the calories on the plate, when you're looking at a 1,000 calorie steak, that's like a pound. When you're looking at like 1,000 calories of steak, it took 10,000 calories of food to make that 1,000-calorie steak. You understand what I'm saying by this? You had this many calories of corn, you fed that corn to the cow wasted about 90% walking around and mooing. Then when you eat the cow, you're getting 1,000 calories. 10%. And that's an average. In particular, cows are a little bit less. But let's just keep it simple. As a global average, when we eat meat, we're getting 10% of the calories we could have eaten had we just ate the stuff we fed to the animal in the first place. Here's another way to think about that. And this is the one that I always find interesting. You're walking up to 9 people, taking all the food off their plate, feeding that to the cow to make your plate. You understand what I mean by that? That 9 times your caloric energy was wasted by the cow running around. So just so I could have the pleasure of eating that steak, there are 9 humans who could not eat an equal number of calories. Coincidentally, this is one of the big arguments for being vegetarians. And it's the reason I was vegetarian for many years before I just got over it. That the number of calories that you hog by eating, please look up the food chain, could have served more people if all of you were eating lower on the food chain. There's a project now to get people to eat zooplankton and insects. Like if we could eat crickets, their efficiency is so high. We grow crickets to make the feed that goes into chickens. Because it needs a lot of protein, you know? Okay. Anybody want to talk more about number 27? If we have discussed that, the only one left that I want to talk about is number 31. Anybody want to ask me something on the way to 31? Because warning, 31, look at me, 3 stars. Has anyone been to the Big Island of Hawaii? Has anybody been to Mount St. Helens? Has anybody visited another volcano that erupted in the last few hundred years? Me? I went to the Big Island a few years ago. I really liked it. I was on the dry side. Oh no. I inhaled the spicy one. Oh man. Oh, I'm gonna die. If I wasn't such a loser, I wouldn't eat during school. Oh God.
Is that awesome water?
Water doesn't help.
milk or something.
Milk.
Oh, I'm dying. Oh my god.
Wash it down with more spicy burrito.
Kelly Biswell. He gives me ghost peppers. Anybody eat ghost peppers? They were 2 years ago. Now there's another spicier one, but. Oh man. So good. But it's so bad. I can't see the whiteboard. Oh God. Okay. If I'm not drawing this well, forgive me. That's supposed to be the big island of Hawaii. Does it look anything like that?
I don't know.
No.
Great. And the airport was right here. And you drive this road that goes like this, and then you skip over to the wet side. And I think this is Hilo. Is that right? The capital? And then you can drive around the coast like this, come back. And right over here is Mauna Loa, is that right? The big one? What's it called?
Mauna Kea or Mauna Lani? Which one? There's two right next to each other.
Oh, okay. That's fine. And combined are they the Mauna Loa? Like, what's Mauna Loa?
Mauna Loa is it's like Mauna Loa and then Mauna Kea. Like they're kind of
Okay. They're next to each other right there, kind of ish?
yeah. Sort of.
More this way?
Yeah.
Fine. Anyway. Now I'm going to tell my story. As I was driving this way, I want to change this view to be looking at them from above. So when I'm looking down at the volcano from above, I could see these. They look like wedges of a pizza that were very distinct. One of them looked like pretty much just black lava rock exposed with nothing happening. It was just literally like black lava flow. And the freeway goes straight across it. You can see it on the left, all the way up to the ocean. Black. Just rock. You know that lava, when it dries up, it makes porous rock, right? Everybody know that? Fluffy, porous rock. How many of you have seen lava rock? The rest of you know what porous means, like sponge? Okay. The one right over here had all these grasses on it. There was like a wedge. Like as I'm driving, it's like, miscellaneous countryside, and then it's like a wedge of grass all the way to the top, then a wedge of black all the way up to the top. Then there was one that had like bushes, and one that had trees. They were all distinct, like every single wedge was totally different. It's like little microhabitat, then totally separate. Anybody know what happened there?
Different periods of time between the last time lava burnt everything on that little wedge.
Yeah, exactly. Different periods of time between the last time the volcano blew some lava out and the time that lava started to recover. Did anybody get to see what I'm talking about and notice this? Does this sound familiar to anybody? You know what I'm talking about? What you're seeing here are different stages of what we call succession. And the notes you got from your book are wrong, and students make some confusion on this. Students get confused on something. So I want to talk about what happens in succession. Volcano blows. Lava burns everything in its path. The lava cools off to make porous lava rock. And what happens next? What's that? Yeah, but does stuff grow on rock very well? If it was a really thin layer of rock, sure, maybe stuff would go through it. But remember that when the lava was flowing in the first place, it evaporated everything even moderately organic and melted everything else. So technically, there is no such thing as thin lava rock. Even when lava flows over granite, it tends to fuse in the middle and just bond to the rock below. Lava usually is pretty darn thick once it cools off. Lava rock
It's usually pretty thick. So what happens before stuff can start living there? What? Erosion of what? The lava rock? So you just get little pieces of sand? This is not supposed to be easy. Your book didn't make this clear. I need you to think about this for a minute and try to use your imagination so we can move on with the lecture. Yeah?
Maybe like a landslide because of that part of the lava rock. So
Let's imagine no landslides are happening, because that's a possibility, but not part of our understanding of how the landscape recovered from impact. Yeah?
You said, when the book said that it was like the treaty glaciers, so it said it, like the lava flows and at the ends of the treaty glaciers.
I think these are two places where this happens. When a glacier backs off, or when lava grows, you've got no dirt left. So how will things ever grow? Yeah.
Like vegetation and stuff on like kind of the border of where like the lava flow meets where like things aren't destroyed. It kind of starts to slowly spread back across.
You are right and you are wrong. You are right. That is where the seeds come from. Correct. But I want to get back to that lava rock thing. You're telling me that those seeds are going to fall in lava rock and then they're going to grow? Yeah.
Well, like first, like really super generalist, super tolerant seeds or whatever comes onto the lava rock.
You're right about which life, but we're all skipping a step. We're skipping a step.
Like maybe some like trees and stuff like fall on top of lava rock and then decompose and turn into little pockets of nutrients that stuff can grow on.
Kind of yes. The first thing that happens, your book said this wrong. Primary succession is the development of soil by decomposing whatever can decompose, and this can take tens of thousands of years before you get dirt. So yeah, sure, maybe a tree falls over, but more likely than not, like it rains and there's little pools of water and little amoeba and algae come out of bird poop and out of windblown spores. And they'll make like a little tiny pond scum in like a little pocket the size of a pinhead in the rock. And then that'll dry up and decompose, and that starts to make gradually soil. Remind me, we got to come back to this tomorrow.